table. Today we got joining us Steve Fernandez, returning guest of New York Tri-state Armwrestling, and Gregg Sharp, the founder and creator of the World Series of Arm Wrestling. This man's taking on the United States by storm with arm wrestling. I gotta say, going into your third season, man, this is pretty awesome what you got going on. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about, the production you got going on and your inspiration for it.
No, I appreciate that, guys. I've been arm wrestling now since the mid 2010s. I've never been anything other than a regional guy. I've enjoyed the sport. I often say that it's maybe the one thing I've done over the course of my life that I can go to an event and find 200 people that I absolutely just enjoy hanging out with. And it's a weird feeling. It's the camaraderie in arm wrestling is like no other. And I've played a lot of sports. I've played football. I've boxed. I've trained. And when you look at sports in itself, team sports are identifiably different, right? Because you have to have a camaraderie and a family value when you're playing with 5 if it's on basketball or 11 when it's on football. You have to jive, right? And not always jive, but you have to jive in some ways. But in arm wrestling, you're really an alpha individual against all these other alpha individuals that you walk into this room and identifiably so everyone's looking to win. But in the same vein, everybody's out there looking to help you, right? They're out there to support you. They're, win, lose, or draw, you may have a bad day on the table, but the guy who had the better day on the table is going to come over. He's going to chat you up. You're going to go out to the practice table. You're going to say, well, what if I did this? Or what if I did that? And it's a feeling and a camaraderie in a family that it's hard to explain to people on the outside. So getting involved with World Series of Arm Wrestling was a little bit of a weird scenario for me because I found myself coming out of COVID with really an opening in terms of my life. My son had graduated college. My daughter was in college. I'm a single dad, and in value, I had all of this open time now to really kind of re-explore some of the things I really love to do. I own a construction company as an entity, but I've been in the world of entertainment for a long time with movies and when I owned Explode Fight Series and so many other little different opportunities that I've had. So I said, you know what, let me look at where the holes are in our sport. And at the time, there was a hole with really a cross-country series that actually paid the end athlete. Now, we had cross-country series that do a great job. They do an amazing job. We had the Arnold. We didn't have the Arnold. We have the Arnold again. We had the nationals. We've had several different nationals out there that lead to worlds. But we really had nothing inherently our own in the United States that would give an athlete a chance to qualify and then go somewhere to actually win a prize that was greater than a medal. And so I kind of started to formulate that value. And being in entertainment, I said, well, how do I take that and try to make a business model against it? Because ultimately it's a lost leader unless you have a business model. So in value, the end game became, to me, let me take this to a platform, networks, that would hopefully get us back on the right path in terms of exposure. We had Wall with ESPN, and that value of ESPN that they had, and I can't speak for Wall, but I can say that we could go out and buy airtime on ESPN tomorrow if we wanted to. We could do it tonight if we wanted to. But how do we get networks that want to embrace us and monetize us and vocalize us and socialize us to become a more mainstream value? And that became the plan. Run good events, run tight events, have a good cash prize. But more importantly, find the stories behind the pullers. And season 1 was really a pilot season. It was an opportunity for us to kind of jump into the waters and feel what it's like to travel, 8,800 miles across the country in my truck with my daughter, and find a way to introduce ourselves. And then season 2 became more of the storytelling. We are about to, when you're dealing with networks, it's really a deli system, to be honest with you. You put in your content, they approve it, and then it's a matter of when they want to air you. But we went around and we told stories on Jody Williams, Justin Green, Mike Coburg, Amy Sheldon. We've got stories of Julian Gallahan. So we got stories that we took across the country. We've got blurbs and interviews with athletes in season 2. So season 2 became the kind of the run, and now we're in season 3 where we've opened up and we're telling more stories. We increased the qualifiers. We've increased the prize money. We've increased our exposure, and we're excited. I mean, Riverside 2 weeks ago, it's been 2 weeks or last week, something like that. I'm 54 now, guys. My birthday was Friday, so I think my memory is waning a little bit.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, man. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So sometimes I forget who I am. So if I have to read the moniker on the bottom, it's just me reminding myself.
Age is just a number, my friend. Age is just a number, okay? Because let me tell you something. I'm sure I'm a little bit younger than you, and I still don't remember shit. So
yeah, but we learned.
Stress will do that.
We learned growing up on the East Coast, right? I mean, you just don't remember shit. You see something happen in the street, I don't remember. So that's ingrained into us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we've seen an increase now, season 1 in Riverside, and Riverside's a good litmus for us. And why I say that is because it's my backyard, right? I mean, when you're doing an event in your own backyard, if you don't have the value of support, you're really not going to go anywhere and find additional support if you can't do it in your home.
That's a good way. That's a perfect way to think, my friend.
So, we've had increased value from season 1 through season 3. And believe it or not, I was chatting it up with Bill Collins, who's a very, very good friend. And we were talking about the event, and we said, it's interesting. We've gone 5 more athletes a year from season 1 to season 2 to season 3. And what that number really equates out to is 73 athletes to 78 athletes to 83 athletes, and mostly pro, because that's where the draw is, right? Because the money at the end of the day is where the pros are going to compete. But we've also seen an increase in entries, which has been a value to us because it also is a quantifiable point, because we only have 4 weight classes. We don't have 54, 76, 89, 99, 209, 222. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you have the ability to take an average athlete and have them buy into 4 or 6 different weight classes, those numbers can get skewed. But we took our numbers and we had 158 entries, which for us is perfect. That's really a really good manageable number, which means that every athlete pulled in their weight class on both hands, essentially, with the exception of a couple. So in looking at that, that's a real step up for us. In what we're seeing now, which is interesting, is that there's a high level of atypical pullers coming to the table, people we don't see. And we saw that in Riverside. There was probably 12 brand new pullers that have never been to an event that came to that event as a jumping off point. In Dallas, we'll see what Dallas holds, but Dallas has had a lot of excitement. We're going there this week. I've had about 8 calls from people who've never pulled in a tournament. And I've taken the time each time to talk to them and say, hey, listen, number one, if you've never pulled in a tournament, get to a practice first and foremost. I don't want you pulling in the amateur side. I don't want you pulling in the pro side. I don't want you going home on Monday regretting the fact that you jumped into arm wrestling. But please come down, because ultimately you're going to find people that are in your area that you can then create a relationship with on a team, and they could teach you how to pull and teach you how to pull safe, and then teach you how to compete. Because arm wrestling to me is not about competing your first time on the table. It's learning how to pull safe. And once you accomplish that skill set of how to know when to let go in an arm wrestling situation when you're practicing, how to know when your arm is outside you, how to understand when something isn't feeling good, that it's more important to lay it down, reassess, re-engage and see where that's put you in a bad position, and then get to the competitive end, right? Because we all build up that tendon strength at some value, where we could start getting a little bit outside our shoulder, maybe not much, but a little bit more, and put ourselves in a more high volatile position and be safe. So I always encourage that. And Dallas looks like there's going to be quite a few atypical people there, which is great. We've been teaming up now with a lot more celebrities, which help promote the events, which is great. So I think Dallas is going to be in the mid 70s to low 80s as well. And I like to get done in 4.5 hours. For me, that's the sweet spot. I start at 1. Every once in a while, like we started at 1:15 in Riverside. We had a couple of guys that they didn't hear their name. We had to check their name to roll call. So we get started at that time at 1:15. We were done at 5:45. We get into Dallas. I want to be done at 5:30. I want the event to run smooth. I want it to be time conscious because nobody wants to be there till 10 o'clock at night, wondering, if they're ever going to get the pull. And Billy and Sarah and the TAL do a great job in operational wise, so they're great to partner with. So we're excited about that. And then we have the Jacksonville, which I got to be honest with you guys, between Atlantic City and Jacksonville are probably going to be my 2 favorite events this year. Not because you guys are on the East Coast, but more importantly is we're doing a seminar on the Thursday before Jacksonville at Camp Lejeune. And my son, who's a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, has his battalion coming out. So we're going to have about 850 troops, Marines, that are coming out to just see what an arm wrestling table is. We'll have Don Underwood there. Jamie Sheldon's going to be there. Nathan Williamson's going to be there as a senior ref. Myself, my daughter will be there, who travels with me. And we're just going to be there having a great time, shaking hands with the Marines. I've done a lot with the DOD and the Marine Corps. That's going to be a staple for us in 2025 and in the future. We've got a lot of seminars and events lined up in the next 6 to 8 months, starting early 2025, and going to propel us through maybe however long. But we're going to have 850 troops there, which never have jumped on an arm wrestling table. So we're introducing the value of arm wrestling to a new crowd. That in turn, my friend who's a retired Marine is letting us work with him at his CrossFit gym, which is a big 30,000 square foot gym. I'm expecting maybe 50 to 70 pullers because we've never been to South Carolina, North Carolina, and the Georgia area. We may be pleasantly surprised, but I think that's where we're going to be with our first round down there. But I'm thinking we're going to probably have 400 to 500 spectators, which is
going to be huge. That's going to be huge
for us as an industry and for us as a TV show is great, right? Because ultimately, I want Steve's and the Dans to watch my show 50 times a day. Just leave it on run. I'm prepping you guys to just leave it on run. A shameless plug. But if we get people that don't ever follow us now following us and looking at us, the reciprocity of not only coming from World Series of Arm Wrestling, but then going to YouTube videos, the podcasts like this, everything then creates a bigger value. And that bigger value helps us, again, propel into a bigger light to the networks, which doesn't just help us as World Series of Arm Wrestling, helps everybody. There's dozens of networks out there. We don't have to be the only one on TV. And ultimately, the goal is not to be the only ones on TV. I mean, the ultimate goal is to get everybody out there. And I think that's a very exciting thing for me personally. And then, of course, Atlantic City, I think, is also equally important and exciting because Atlantic City, for us, is the first time we'll actually have a major sponsor promoting us. I mean, we're right now on the marquee at Bally's in Atlantic City. They have us on their website. They're doing posts. We're going to be right off of the boardwalk. They're going to have signs outside getting people to come in. So, again, that crowd is where we're really going to hopefully shine. Now, I think Atlantic City is going to have that 60 to 80 puller range again. I'd love to have more, but I think that's really where the number is going to lie. Atlantic City is and New York is a little bit of a weird situation, as you guys know, is that the East Coast gets a little bit more spread. When you're in Southern California, you can have 100 pullers within 100 miles of you. When you start to get into the East Coast, Long Island, tough. I mean, I grew up in Bellport. So, we did Bayshore last year. Ultimately, it was great to be home. But looking at the logistics of that, having people come across either the bridge or through the tunnel through New York City on a Saturday in the middle of the summer is not necessarily a high priority thing to do. So reassessing that and getting it off the island and getting it to an area where we have an airport, which is Philadelphia. We have major roadways to get down to AC. We're close to Virginia. We're close to Maryland. We're close to New York. Obviously, we're in the Connecticut areas. We're in the Pennsylvania areas. I think we'll be able to draw a little bit more. And we've had, again, a lot of the same volume of calls with people that are interested in the event. So I'm hoping that becomes twofold. Number one, that the support in the East Coast, the New England, New York region, for me, becomes greater. But more importantly, I'm hoping that fan development also becomes greater, because that's the big thing.
Well, if you're going to be there peak season during the summer, that's when everything really takes off beautifully on the boardwalk or in and around Atlantic City. In my opinion, I think that's a great time and venue for the Northeast, because like you said, no one wants to spend an hour and a half in traffic before they get anywhere, and that is in abundance in Long Island. So having to avoid that, I mean, yeah, there's going to be some traffic in Atlantic City, but I don't think it's going to be in any way or capacity the same magnitude of that. I'm personally am very excited, and I'm looking forward to seeing what talent comes down to the Atlantic City tournament. I mean, I love what you guys are doing with the World Series of Arm Wrestling. With seeing Jody Williams, a puller whom I've been following for quite some time now. I mean, I've been in the sport for just under 4 years, and I'm very inspired from a lot of his activities and what he's done with the sport. And then you got Jamie Sheldon, who's coming back down to play in the lighter class, which I'm really excited about, because I decided to climb back up into a little bit of a heavier class. So I hope to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Jamie Sheldon and see where I stand against, that monster.
Jamie is an interesting athlete. When you get to what I'll call world-class level, your strength and your abilities kind of traverse between weight classes within some range. And Jamie certainly was on the high end of the 76s back in the Wall days and before. He's competed on a very, very high end. He's moved up into some heavier classes and did very well last year on the right-hand side. I mean, if you look at Jamie Sheldon as an athlete, there's only two guys that really stopped or got in his way last year, and that was Frank Toulier at the Texas Regional, and then Brent Rockers at the finals. So, those are two on the top 209ers, give or take a few pounds on either which class you're competing in on any day. But those are two of the top 209ers in the U.S. for us. And if you're at that level and you're coming up from 76 and you're able to traverse, 33 pounds, that says something to you. So it'll be interesting to see how his strength translates going down, because now in Dallas, he's pulling a Supermatch with Jody Williams. And Jody will probably come in about 239, maybe 236, 239. He's going to stay in his weight class. They are pulling for bidding rights, if you will, to see who they select for the first season of the house. That's our reality show that we're shooting early 2025. We were going to shoot it late 2024, but all these guys have young kids and families, so we have to kind of work through the holidays on that end. But they're going to pull a super match left and right to see who's going to get the first pick for that. And ultimately, they're going to compete in the tournament the next day. And there's some really strong pullers in Texas, as in everywhere. But the 76 class, you got Greg Gray, you've got Trayton Black, you've got Ian Wagner out there, you've got that young kid. The kid's name I apologize. I'll remember it at some point. But you've got 4 or 5 really, really solid 76ers in that class, which will make it for a tough afternoon for either Jamie or for them. And then the 239 class, I'll tell you, Anthony Lowe last year came into the finals and had a real chance of second, if not first, in the 239s. It would have been interesting to see how he did against Mike Coburg at that time of the day. And what I mean by that is Mike has fluctuated in terms of weights up and down. He made 239 at the last regional. His weight cut for regionals is very tough on him. But he came in very strong for the finals. Anthony Lowe, without giving away all of the storyline before it comes out, did have a little bit of an injury that kind of halted him. So he's coming back with a vengeance for Texas in the 239 class. There's also a young man named Mike Bedwell who pulled in that 220 round robin that Laurie Jenkins did. It was a really cool dude out of Tennessee, I believe he's out of. But Laurie had that at Tim Talmadge's, and Mike Bedwell did very well. He's a kid out of Florida that kind of came out of nowhere on terms of the radar of Texas last year, and kind of his right arm is solid. However, the real sleeper for me, I think, in Texas is if Caleb Ricks shows up. And what weight class Caleb Ricks showed up. He came out to LA less than a year ago and pulled in one of Bill Collins' events, and he destroyed the 209, 220 class. I mean, when I say destroy, Oleg, I think he pulled David Egan. He pulled all the top 209 to 230 guys out here, and he did extremely well. He pulled Scotty Partington. That was no easy class for him to win. So I think Caleb is the sleeper for me out of Texas. I think he is actually the one puller that's Texas born that could actually take a first place medal this year in the finals. And you got Corey West, who comes in from Arkansas. I mean, there's not.
Yeah.
I mean, at some value, he's coming in for the overall, and he's coming in to get his hotel room. And that's really the value of that. I mean, he's such a great guy. He's just a big-hearted guy. He doesn't even take the medals home with him, which is not an insult to any promoter. He actually finds some young children in the crowd to give the medals to. That's how big his heart is, and he'll sign the medal for the kids.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah, I mean, so it's just a great atmosphere. And then ultimately we go to Kansas City. Ryan Johnson out there. He's going to do a great job. We're going to run a coexisting event with a final BMF series points for him that day. We're at Bally's Casino out there. We're inside the Chickies and Pete's restaurant there, which have been a great relationship for us. And then we're off to Utah. And you know, Utah is really my wild card of them all. I love Justin Green and his community up there. But Utah is an interesting place because it's a fairly isolated area. You have to travel to get to Utah. You're either traveling from Idaho, you're traveling from Oregon, you're traveling from Reno or northern Nevada. It's really a wild card event, but there are some great pullers up there, and I hate to miss on those guys. I mean, you've got Jordan Sill up there, you got Cody Merritt up there. You got Robert Baxter if he comes, and he came last year to the qualify, but he didn't come to the finals. I think he puts a dynamic in it. So I think that there's a lot of value getting into the Northwest. It's just really separated out there. And even to get somebody to come from Oregon, which is 2 states over to Utah, it's almost a 10-hour trip. There's no easy road to the Northwest. So, in the future, we want to stay in Utah, but we really got to find a way to encapsulate some of the Oregon and Washington pullers to see how we can get them to either incentive-based or location-based adjustments in order to be able to try to facilitate everyone, which is you never can do, right? You can only please half the time, half the people half the time. The people I can't please always come to my events, right? I mean, that's a funny adage that I love to use. But
I just wanted to take a moment to shout out the people who are viewing, because this is live. We got Jennifer Ann Learned from PA saying what's up. We got Donnie Underwood, who's actually on the East Coast. You know, he's going to be joining you down in Carolinas at the Camp Lejeune. I think he's on the East Coast this weekend as well. And we got Amos Glenn, who's also out of PA, monster of a puller. I hope to actually see him show up at the East Coast Regional. He's a monster dude. And then we got Luke Polsher.
Great guy. Luke is a great guy.
In the chat. He's gonna actually. He said after he wins his WAF title, he's gonna be working on his World Series title.
You know what? Luke is an interesting guy because not only is he an extremely successful professional and just an all-around nice guy. Like, I mean, this gentleman will, text me out of the blue to wish me luck. He never has a bad or despairing word to say. But his value is really twofold, and you can't lose with Luke because in one aspect you want him to pull in your tournament because he's such an accomplished puller. But then in the other aspect, I really would love to have him as a senior referee because he's such a great referee. So, and we can't, in the finals, we can't have guys taking off the shirts to put them on to pull. So it's kind of it's a catch-22. But I would certainly welcome Luke, and he knows that. We talk a little bit, not quite a bit, but a little bit. And, it's just when you have gentlemen like that and you guys and the Don Underwoods and all these guys getting behind you, you start to become more legitimate and people start to genuinely start to take notice. But I want to say in that list that one of you guys, puller in your area, is Jen's husband, Roger.
Yes.
To me, Roger is a monster. For me, I said that in his last Supermatch. I was actually talking to Steve Blackman and Mike Bismuth. I go, guys, this kid is an unknown. I mean, but he's such a strong puller. I think he's going to make his breakout debut. And it would be remiss for me to not mention the fact that Mike and Steve are back as our next season or this season host and host into the future. We're going to do quite a bit of stuff together out there. They're great guys. I mean, they're really just blue collar, no nonsense guys. Steve, I can't say enough good things about Steve. He's one of those guys that makes everybody feel good no matter where you are. He'll pump you up. Mike, no nonsense. Him and I get along well because we're just all about, the operations of the business. Yeah.
Very straightforward.
So just great guys. I'm hoping that the Baileys are coming out, which I think they are. And he will do very well in the finals if he travels to New York. I think he would be he might be the second sleeper in the 239 class for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, he had a matchup with Jody, I think, a little way back. It was a close one, too, from what I recall. So I definitely think that, he's definitely on a much, much better trajectory than he was then. He's much more focused. I saw him at Knuckles Up. And he had a challenge with Uncle John, and he showed up for Uncle John. He showed up big time, and he won. So I hope to see him there as well because he's on a tear, definitely.
He's quality. He is really. He would be a guy. And listen, again, it goes back to space, right? When you look at talent across arm wrestling. It's hard to judge real true inherent talent, in my opinion, because you can go to Southern California and you can go to Mendy's gym. And let me tell you, on a Thursday night, there is nothing but killers in their gym. I mean, all world champions, all killers, all guys that are pulling, serious as serious can be. And you look at that value and say, man, that's a real reason why these guys are really good because they're practicing around talent all the time. But then when you get into some of these outlying areas and you find some of these guys that don't have the talent pool around them that they can consistently work to get better, but come to the tournaments and exceed and excel, then you just kind of think to yourself, what would you get with a Roger if you threw him in LA for 3 weeks there, and then threw him in Missouri and do 3 weeks there, and threw him into Texas, and you start to see the infinite value that this young man can have. That's the exciting thing about this sport, right?
Absolutely.
There's a kid, and I hope he comes out, and everybody's young to me, but I guess that's the allure of getting old. But there's this young man out in Kansas City. His name, I think it's Corey LeClaire. He is a monster of a young man. I think he's in his mid to late 20s, about 6'9", about 440 pounds. He came out to the scene about 2 years ago, and then he disappeared. His dad is as big of a man. I pulled in Brian Corner's Wounded Warrior tournament just a couple of years ago, and literally I was pulling his dad, and the man went down, and I caught him, and now I've got him on my bicep, and I'm starting to adjust. He literally puts his knee to the ground, so he's not leaning down; he is on the ground. He is kneeling down. He's still over the table. And now I'm trying to work my arm back over top of him. And I'm just laughing to myself. I said, you know what? This man is about 390 pounds. I need an excavator to get this guy off the ground. And ultimately, luckily that day I had the better of his hand. But, these two monsters, if somebody really got in front of them, would be contenders. So, I mean, it's so cool to travel around and see folks like this. It's amazing to me. And that's what builds the sport. And that's why I love to tell the stories. And everybody's got great stories. It's just a matter of getting them all out eventually. So.
Without a doubt, and creating events like yours. And we got Steve here, who's also an event director, founder of New York Tri-state Armwrestling. You guys are making some serious moves. I know, Steve, you got an event, a Supermatch series in the next 2 weeks.
Mike Bisman's actually going to be in it. Yep.
Yep. Mike Bisman's going to be, highlighted in there, which is going to be awesome. And then
is he pulling left-handed or right?
He's pulling left, but I don't know. I really don't understand why he was the guy that he's pulling, and he even knows he's a lot stronger on his left. You know what I mean? So I don't understand the guy that he's pulling. It was just you want to pull left? And Mike's just yeah, sure. Pull left. He's a fucking monster. You know what I mean? So, but I got a couple of guys from the Long Island guys going to be. Perusa's also going up against Wilds. Perusa's also, part of the their whole crew over there. You know what I mean? With Bisman and Steve Black and everybody. So I got a couple of guys from New York. And then, man, it's going to be a hell of a show, man. I can't wait, man. I have Michaels too, who's going up against David, so it's going to be really good. It's about 10 super matches total, and we're going all the way from 154 all the way up to 242 plus. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome.
It's great.
I'm hopeful to see them not only pull and compete against each other at the Supermatch event, but also to sit there and say whoever takes the win or takes the loss, rather, says I have a chance of redemption at Gregg Sharp's event down, in New Jersey, because it's still close. It's not terribly far from each other. So, that talk about having that close in proximity of events. I think that's crucial to have, because, when we have all these events all over the place, sometimes they're a little further apart in time-wise from each other. So, hey, I didn't get to do this, or I can do that better the next time type of deal. I think that this is a great segue for that.
Yeah.
It's funny, Mike Bisman, asking Mike to pull left-handed is like asking him to not only do a super match left-handed, but let's go bowling after and let's pay $100 a game. I mean, Mike Bisman was a pro bowler. So, I mean, it's, you don't want to go into the man's strengths too much.
That's what I'm saying. Going up against Malcolm, don't get me wrong. Malcolm's a beast. You know what I mean? He's very, very strong. I mean, but if you ask him with right hand, I'd say, all right, that's a good game. But Malcolm, he's a strong guy, but Bisman is that's his money hand. You know what I mean? And it's a lot stronger than his right. And he knows that. We actually spoke about this in nationals. And he's like, and he was looking at me, he was actually kind of laughing. And I was just like, what's the matter? And he goes, "Don, he asked me to pull left. What is he? Of course I'm going to pull left." And I was just like, yeah, I was like, I figured that. I was like, I knew that was like automatic, you know what I mean? So, but he's a beast of a guy, man. I've seen him pull a couple of times. He's a hell of a good ref too. You know, I love their whole crew too. Same thing with Paul Cruz and everybody out from out there. You know what I mean? So they're all great guys.
Paul Cruz is in it. Well, you know, it's interesting you put that name out there because he's dropped down to the 239 class. So Paul's going to qualify at 239, which is another sleeper name because a lot of heavyweights, you know, who find themselves getting into that 239 class, AKA Robbie Burnett, when he made the transition, found themselves doing very, very well. You know, they seem
242 at Nationals, and he looked like a monster. He looked shredded to
cut like nothing I've ever seen before, man. It's
he didn't
insanity.
Look 42.
It's
he
scary.
Didn't look like at all. He looked a lot leaner, but because you know you're used to him being so bulky and so big, you know, and so but. He was shredded down. He told me, he was like, I'm lean. He was lean, man. He was shredded. Yeah, he was pure muscle, man.
And Paul has a good size hand, which is, you know, when you start getting into the lighter weights, hand size makes a difference. When you're in super heavyweights, everybody's got a big hand, right? But when you start to get down to 239 or the 209 class, and you have that Alan Fisher-esque kind of hand, you know, that's 3 times the size of normal people's hands. You create a different dynamic when you're pulling because you can't bust. Well, I mean, in Alan's prime, it would be very hard to bust Alan's hand back. I mean, he has a catcher's mitt, but when you have a catcher's mitt and a thick wrist, you know, and you can stop somebody in the middle and you can control that center table. It's a different ball game, and Paul should see some real success with that. Because there are a lot of 239ers out there that are ranked that don't have big hands. They rely on speed, which is still an element, guys, right? I mean, speed kills. You know, if you heard the O and you're already done, then you missed the start. Right. But you know, he brings a different dynamic there. You know, the interesting thing for me from New York is to see if and whom we see as super heavyweights come in. I think we're going to have Alexander Yankowski come in. He's going to come back for this year. I think Danny Byrne is going to pull in the supers. I don't know if Pedro Rodriguez is coming back this year or not. I hope he is.
Alexander the Russian you're talking about?
What's that?
You're talking about Alexander the Russian?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's pulling out my tournament, too, at the Supermatch.
Oh, good.
Yeah. He's a beast, man. He's a monster, dude. He's a tall guy. He's got a long lever, and he can handle his weight with no problem, man. His
strength is his physical. Where he got frustrated, I think, or he got into trouble was getting frustrated mentally. In our series last year, when you have a long lever, you're prone to foul, especially on small pads. It's just it is what it is. You have to really concentrate on where your elbow position is, just like anything else. And adjusting. A lot of times he found himself coming off the pad, and that got inside his head. If he can stay focused, which I'm sure he can. I mean, he's pulled on the world stage. He was a Zloty puller for many years. You know, those are things that he can become an element for the finals. And you know, you have a great card there, Steve. Kudos to you. You know, you got a really solid level of pullers. The only thing that I truly, you know, get frustrated in is that when I go traveling, I can't make anybody else's tournaments. I'm literally stuck in, and not that I would rather be anywhere else but driving across the country with my daughter, but I just don't have the ability to get out there. So when you guys have tournaments outside of the summer and what I'm doing, I'm certainly going to come out to support because it's important. And, you know, just like I traveled to Jody's and TALs.
I can tell you how much I'll be in the city. You'll see me there.
I appreciate that. You know, that's why the community is great. I mean, we are going to put together and I say this, it's in development and it's almost ready to officially announce. But one of the things that I grew up, I fought when I was younger, and not that I was a great fighter, but I fought. And in boxing, we had Tuesday night fights on USA Network. We had Thursday night fights on ESPN, and none of those fights ever went, you know, against the big cards that were on the weekends. But they created these great niches. because it filled a spot where people could actually enjoy boxing all week long. So one of the things I've developed there and getting ready to launch is Thursday Night Arm Fights. And it's going to be a Supermatch series that we're going to do, but it's going to be exclusively on Thursday nights. And that way it gets away from competing against airtime and visual time on the weekends when guys are doing the tournaments and promoting. It doesn't create conflicts. We are going to be doing several of them at Bally's. They've committed to us out there in Atlantic City. It's a great location. We're going to do the Midwest, and we're going to do the East or the West Coast. And I think it's just another way for us to build and continue to promote. It just gets us on more days. And if we get on more days, people start to see arm wrestling as a real sport and not just something that they watched Stallone do in the 80s and, is very typical of why bar fights happened in the 90s. And if we can do those things, then everybody grows. So, and Steve, I'll probably lean on you at some point in 2025 to if you want to help and develop some of that, because it's teaming partner.
Absolutely.
Well, I have the links, but for everybody who's watching, I have the links in the chat down below in the description, and also the QR code to all things World Series of Arm Wrestling, all their social media links. It's on their link tree. Go ahead and click on that. Feel free to follow them in all the capacities, see what's coming up with them, because that is huge. I love the sound of that. So I want everyone to be able to follow and tune in, because the more eyes on this, the more this man grows and the more opportunities he's going to be able to present each and every one of us.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
Ray Romanowski. I just want to say Ray's also going to be on the Supermatch card with James Reed. He's an absolute monster. I know you felt him before, Dan, and Ray's joke. He adjusts really well, very fast. As soon as he feels that he's got any kind of niche that he can take care of, he will jump on it. So shout out to Ray Romanowski and James Reed. That's going to be a hell of a match too. I can't wait, man. I can't wait. It's going to be good. And a shout out to Dakota Shipman, man, from Canada. He's a shit, man. He's a hell of a puller. I've seen him at the MAC tournament too. Hell of a puller. Man.
We got Brian Parliament from there as well. There Through the Fingers podcast is tuning in. Our brothers from Canada. We gotta get at one of your events up there, Greg. How are we gonna do that?
It's interesting. And first, I wanted to ask Steve, how do you see your event? I mean, that's important too, because I'll tune into it.
So it's going to be through on Facebook.
Okay.
And a shout out to also Chuck Bardo and Goki. That's going to be another match. Chuck is actually going to be helping me out with a couple of cameras and stuff. So we're going to be setting up something a little bit different, a little bit more involved, a little bit more, and everything that you were saying before, Greg. I'm 100% on that. Having other people, not just pullers, but other people get involved and see what type of arm wrestling sport, how it goes, how it is, the rules, the hooks, the top rolls. The people don't understand that, and they need to grab a concept of that. So honestly, what we're trying to do is we're trying to put up cameras, on the sides, cameras from the down, cameras from up top, so you can see the live stream from maybe like 3 or 4 different views. So
that's
while
awesome.
at it, you could see it from the top, you could see it from the side, you could see it from the bottom, and you can see it really right there. So you can see pretty much from everywhere and every kind. If elbows off, or if he lifts it up, or if anything and everything that you can see, to try to get it a little bit more interactive with the viewers.
That's awesome.
Not with just the pullers. Obviously the pullers, we always want the pullers to be there. They're always going to be there, but other people that don't understand the sport and how it goes and how the way it is. That's the biggest thing, Right. So, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Got jerseys for all the guys too, custom jerseys for all the guys, custom awards too, and everything else. I don't know if you took a look at the awards, Dan. I just posted.
Oh, those rings look beautiful. These are like Super Bowl, basketball, rings, championship rings. They're gorgeous.
Rings. Oh yeah, it's going to be engraved on the inside. New York Smoke Supermatch series, and obviously on the side this is champion with a big red ruby, there on the front. Those are going to be all the main guys that are going to be there at the Supermatch. Just want to shout them all out, to tell you the truth, because they've been so great to me, and been a couple of difficult times, right now with a couple of people that are, like you said, Greg, almost everybody that arm wrestles and pulls are great people. Almost everybody. But I just want to shout out to Bisman and Malcolm. It's going to be a hell of a match. Goki and Bardo. Bardo, you're a hell of a guy, man. I always see you. Always talk, man. Hell of a guy. Like I said, Romanowski and Reed. Ray's a good friend of mine. So is Reed, too, as well. Ray's a hell of a puller. I can't wait to see him. Alexander, you know Alex, who I'm talking about. He's pulling up against Butler. Butler's no joke, man. He's got one hell of a hand. And Wilds and Perusa, that's probably going to be my main card. I'm probably going to start off with that. With Wayne, Wilds is a beast. He's at the MAC tournament. He was at Winter Blast. He was just at the Nationals. Pulled up against John Anthony Fernandez. John Anthony Fernandez is an absolute monster too. Perusa, he's been getting better every single fucking tournament I see him. So I can't wait to see them pull as well. Doble's one of my favorite pullers, man. Love Doble. Love is everything about him. Is such a good guy. His vibe, and he just does not give up, man. Does not matter if he's holding you on your bicep. He will pull you and string you all the way fucking back if he has to. He is one hell of a puller. He's going up against Gulo. Gulo's no joke too as well. McCurchin is going up against Tatro. McCurchin, let me tell you something, man. He's one of those guys that he will put every single little bit into that match, whatever he's got left. I mean, he is willing to, and I hate to say it, and I really hate to say it, that guy is willing to break his fucking arm, man. I've seen him in the worst positions, going to full press, flat press. He's just a beast, man. He's willing to do whatever he does, whatever he's got to
leave it all on the table.
Oh yeah, Chris Vert and I'm sorry, it's Coviello. Coviello, I seen him pull at New Way. He's an absolute monster. He was pulling with Roger Learned, and let me tell you something, man. Coviello is no joke, and Chris Vert, for his weight class and that specific weight class, I'd have to say honestly, that's going to be one hell of a match. I know you probably know Chris Vert with the whole Long Island crew and everybody.
I do. Him and Jack Pedro, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. I already shouted out Bisman and Malcolm. Malcolm, watch out for Bisman's left hand because that's his money hand. And Wilson, Yusuf Wilson, honestly, he is probably the most strategic up and coming puller. He's one of the most strategic guys that I've seen in the setup. While he's pulling, he adjusts to whatever your weakness is to make sure that he takes advantage of it. So he's absolutely phenomenal. He is so fast too. But he's going up against Ryan Woods. Ryan Woods is an absolute fucking monster. Every single time I see him pull, his speed, his power, I mean, his hook, he's just way too powerful for everybody I've seen. So between strategy and technique and Yusuf going up against Ryan, that's straight power. I can't wait for that match. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous. And I think the last and finally is, which is going to be absolutely ridiculous, is Nicobots versus Michaels. I don't know if you guys heard. I know, Dan, you know Nicobots, David. He's so fast. He's probably one of the fastest pullers I've ever seen. He's got a double pump, which pretty much he slams you. And then if he doesn't get you in that first one, he's got that second double pump that he tries to get you in. So he does have strength. His speed takes over, though. So if he gets Michaels, the thing is, Michaels is probably one of the best pullers I've ever seen between 154 to 165. He'll even go up to pull to 176. Dan, you know Michaels, man.
It's going to be a fireworks of a match.
Yeah, I can't wait for this, man. I'm so amped up for this Supermatch series. It's going to be so great, man. The pullers that are there are top-notch pullers all around the tri-state area, so it's going to be good. It's going to be really good.
Where are you holding the event, Steve?
So the event is going to be at the Marriott Courtyard. It's the first time where we had the Battle of the Tri-State. Now, Battle of the Tri-State, it actually overloaded over too much. So many people. We expected 60, 70 people. There was about 120 to 130 people there. So this Supermatch series is not going to be a tournament set. It's just going to be a Supermatch with 10 Supermatches. So you can fit probably 50, 60 people in there, not 120, 130 like we had the first time. So that was a little bit of a downfall, that didn't really realize how everything was happening, and how many people were coming. And all of a sudden we had the whole room was packed, filled with people all the way jam-packed. I mean, Jesus. But which is a blessing in disguise. I'm not saying anything. Thank you for everybody for coming and everything else like that. But Supermatch series is going to be a little bit more involved specifically on the pullers. I want them to feel that kind of pay-per-view feeling, that look that I'm getting this jersey, I'm getting these awards, and the same thing like you were saying, we're actually interviewing the pullers ahead of time, that day, kind of get a backstory on them, let everything pull and everything like that. So when we put it on a Facebook or put it on a YouTube or anything like that to stream it, we're going to put obviously an interview of Matt Wilds. It's going to be there, and Perusa, and then you'll see them going into against the match. I want this to feel like this is a movie, like this is something so high end, like a UFC fight, pretty much. Like when they interview them, they actually want them to let them know, like, hey, where are you from? Where do you train? How do you train? How do you do this? Where do you do this with who? You know, so really get that backstory from everybody else. Really get that backstory from everybody else, you know, to know exactly what's going to happen, what's going on, and then obviously have that match go on, and then you know exactly what's going to happen, you know. So
awesome. Listen, I'm only jealous that I can't be there, but I will watch.
Watch it.
And if you ask me if I'd ever pull Mike, I probably wouldn't, but I certainly am not going to pick his left hand if I do.
No, never.
Yeah, no, his
That's
left
what we were
hand
talking
definitely
about
a
too.
creature of different origin.
So,
also, just so you guys can know, all the viewers follow Steve's Tri-State New York Arm Wrestling Facebook page. I have it linked in the chat as well as down below, and that QR code. All things that's coming up. You know, he has another event later on in the year. It's Arnold Qualifier. I don't want to go too much detail with that because there's a lot more coming up with that. But there's the event page either which way. There's a lot coming up in this summer, folding into the fall. I'm loving the energy that we're having in the sport of arm wrestling. There's room for us all to grow. You know, there's space for each and every entity to really knock it out of the park in their own arena, but also, you know, collaborate with others and, you know, come together on a level that we've never seen in this sport. You know, I was just having this conversation with somebody else recently that I think COVID was probably the best thing to ever happen to arm wrestling because it gave birth to a lot of these different concepts and ideas on how people can, you know, do a better job, maybe work together better. It did create some more chasms and you know, differences of opinion, but guess what? Those differences of opinion have now bonded in certain ways, and these guys are branching off, like you with the World Series of Arm Wrestling and Steve with, you know, Tristate Armwrestling. I gotta say, I'm loving it because it just creates more opportunities for me to go and pull and get more excited about the sport that I'm so already enthralled in.
Well,
yeah, Greg, I'd definitely like to work with you, Greg, one day, my man. It would be a pleasure to work with you one day.
Absolutely, Steve, and same here. And just to expand on your thoughts real quick, Dan, I think the real value that people have to get behind in our sport, and that COVID kind of taught us, was that if we're not seen in public, we can still be seen on social media platforms and grow the market and grow our identities. Because at the end of the day, COVID taught us that you can make money on social media. You can be a marketing influencer. You can be someone that can really push your own, destiny in anything that you do. I mean, look at the amazing accomplishment of 1 million subscribers for Devin Lorette on YouTube. Yep. When you start to look at those numbers and you put those into perspective, someone who is doing 1 million subscribers and better in consistent content are typically making somewhere between $20,000 and $60,000 a month. Now, I'm not saying Devin is, and I'm not saying that he's not making more, but that's the equation that subscribers to YouTube on those platforms typically make. And that's not buying bots and subscribers. Those are organic people that want to watch you.
Right.
So, I always, even back in the day when I owned Explode Fight Series, I always explained to the athletes, and one of the things I try to preach is that you can create your own small funnel of disposable income by being active on your social media. You don't have to be Devin Lorette. You can be Gregg Sharp, have 10, 12, 15,000, followers if you actively stay out there and give a message. But then you can translate that into $50, $100, $200, $300 a month, which is your disposable income to go pull tournaments, right? It's that entry fee. It's and then you can go to your sponsors in your area, and it's an interesting dynamic. But if you've got 15,000 local Long Island people following you, and you go to your favorite deli and you say, "Hey, Tony, give me a pastrami sandwich," and by the way, I'm on Steve's live stream coming this weekend. why don't you throw me a couple $100 so I can enter? I'll put you on my T-shirt, and you guys will get shout outs, right? Now all of a sudden, people start to understand how the sport can also develop on their own small end. It's not always about the promoter getting bigger and better. There's a bifold equation there. It's about the athlete also understanding that they have a dynamic and a value that they can expose and grow on. And I think that's a level that will also help our sport. Because if you look at a parallel sport like bodybuilding for years in the late 90s, early 2000s kind of dropped, right? It dipped. And then all of a sudden it started to peak again going into COVID. Then COVID turned all of these guys into just social media gurus, right?
Yeah.
So you get a guy like Chris Bumstead, who's, classic Mr. O, I think 5 or 6 times, but he has 8 million followers. He only makes $50,000 to win the Mr. O, but $50,000 to him is 1 week on social media.
Right.
And he doesn't need the titles create his legitimacy, right? It creates his legacy. But the money that he makes is not in bodybuilding, it's actually telling a story.
Right.
And I think if everybody strives, to see what Everin has done and others are trying to do, I think we find that there'll be more money in the sport, because then we can go out and find sponsors, the big sponsors that will want to be behind the events because they see the athletes have reach.
Well, you're talking about the spirit of networking, Greg, because that's what networking is all about. You're elevating the tide for everybody. Right. Not just yourself individually. Even though your efforts might be, elevating you to a certain height, everyone around you gets the benefit from it. And that's what I've always been, eager to do. And that's why I like to have this platform, because now I get to be a part of, a connection that both you and Steve will run off and down, to the sunset with. But, I'm grateful that I have that participation in that journey, because it's all about raising the opportunities, raising awareness to what opportunities are out there, and building that up, and developing a platform where everybody can actually grow from.
And Greg, I didn't know if you knew or if you didn't, but the Arnold's Classics are back. Just so you know what I mean, because I know you're saying they're not, and they were, because they were gone, and
now they're back. Yeah.
So just so you know, in September 28th, there's going to be King of this Tri-State, and it's going to be an Arnold's Classic qualifier. So if you ever want to put something together, and do something in New York or anything like that, and join together, for a qualifier or any kind of Arnold's like that, let me know. We'll try to do something together, man. I'd love to do something like that.
Absolutely. It's September, maybe too quick, but certainly after November. Somewhere in the early spring would be great for me. I'm lucky enough that I have the entertainment thing that I do. We're shooting our second season of Bikini Showdown, which will be a great show. We've got a country music star we're going to do a reality show with. And, I've got some pretty cool little things that I have to shoot.
Yeah, me and Dan are actually doing something in Montana with Mabel. We're actually trying to put something together. It's I'm just going to throw it out there just so the people have a little bit of a
teaser.
Yeah, a little teaser. So I'm not going to say the name, but we thought of Country Boys versus the City Boys. Now that's not the name. I'm just throwing it out there. You know what I'm talking about, Dan?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an idea of what we're doing. Reason being is because we got in touch with Mabel, talked to him over the podcast, and now we're getting some Montana boys, and we're getting some tri-state area, New York, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Connecticut, kind of around here, and we're doing something big. We're gonna do.
It's an interesting dynamic, because you can both say, the water we drink may be the thing that makes us different, right? I mean,
bingo.
We're all drinking out of hoses. The guys up in Montana are all drinking out of streams. So,
right.
Who's got the best water might be the ultimate deciding factor.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely going to be big, man. We got some really good pullers that are going to be there. I already got some people in mind. If I can get Paul with me to go with me, down in Montana, I'm going to ask him to see what the deal is. I'm going to ask probably a couple more people. Sam Mitchell, Sam's an absolute fucking monster. So I'd love to have him up there too.
Absolutely.
And Dan, at 176. We'll see if he wants to jump in. You know what I mean? Being one of the
Absolutely,
top,
without doubt.
one national guy that we have here in New York right now. Well, in Pennsylvania, I'd have to say. So that's what we're looking at. I can't wait for those things to happen though. There's a lot of things that happen, but definitely love to do something with you, man, in the future. It'd be great, man. It'd be my pleasure.
Absolutely. Same here.
Yeah.
Well, it's been real. I don't want to keep you any longer, Greg. I don't want to keep you any longer, Steve. I know Steve is preparing for a big barbecue, 4th of July. It's hence the Star Bagels.
Yeah, that's why I'm just walking around in the back because they're kind of getting everything ready. They're kind of waiting for my ass to get the hell off the computer.
So I just wanted to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Collaborate and Pull Together podcast. It's been fun. I enjoy doing this. If anybody is interested in becoming a part of the show, please feel free to shoot me a message on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whichever one. I'm fairly easy to get a hold of. I'm not hiding anywhere. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to have you on the show and talk about what's happening in your neck of the woods in arm wrestling. Let's do a little bit of a flex. We always like to finish it off with one of those. Come on, Greg. Let's see that.